I'd like to call the March 5th school board meeting to order. This is the place and the time for our regular board meeting. Welcome to all of you who are joining us this evening, as well as those individuals who will be joining us on delayed broadcast. Allow me to introduce the board members at the table with me. We have Sean Heitman, Karina Hernandez. From my left, we have Ben Fletcher and Janelle Carter. At the center table with me, we have Brian Bartz. To my right, the board secretary, and to my left is Dr. Theron Schutte, the superintendent of schools, and I'm Bee Niblack. We have an opportunity for individuals from the community to participate in the board meeting during public comment. You will be allowed 5 minutes to address the board, but please know that by board policy, we will not be able to respond to your comments, but we thank you for them anyway. And if you are wishing to do that, you need to sign up on the sheet that is on the speaker table. Please read with me the mission statement for the Marshalltown School Districts. We develop learners who have the knowledge, skills, and positive mindset to successfully pursue a meaningful future through personalized learning experiences. And stand as you're able and join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any changes in the agenda?
We do not.
May I have a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Fletcher Carter, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. The motion carries 5-0. Mr. Potter.
Okay. Let's start with the class of 1977. Members of the class.
All right, members of the class of 1977 are here to make a presentation. Grant, do you want to speak on it in behalf?
We are representing the class of 1977. This is Ann Hayes Isgreg and her husband Jeff Isgreg, and I'm Grant Britnell. On behalf of the class of 77, we would like to present 2 checks. And I told Theron that they were $500 each, but due to market conditions, they're $800 apiece now. So our intentions are for one check to go to the Roundhouse renovation, the activity fund, and the other check to go to the fine arts, vocal music, band, drama, and things like that. So that's our intention, and I know you'll spend them wisely, and they're in need. So thank you for letting us present this. And as our saying goes, is this heaven? No, it's the class of 77.
Well, thank you very much for your generosity.
Thanks, Theron.
I'll hand this right over to the banker.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Andy for the class of 81 now, so.
Our next recognition is
Our next recognition is the Class 3A State Runner-Up Bowling Team.
we also brought along Shaylin Pickett, who is representing the
Shaylin Pickett, who's representing the girls bowling team as well. So,
you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Comes and goes.
Grab that one.
if you guys want to be closer now, introduce yourselves and maybe your grade, and just, if you want to talk a little bit about the season or have a coach do that. Yeah.
I'm Ray Wiegand. I'm a junior, and I was the head bowling captain this year. We had a pretty good season, finished runner-up at state, and it was fun. Team gelled well together all year, and I was proud to be a part of the team and be a captain.
I'm Shaylin Pickett, one of the captains for the girls bowling team. I'm a senior this year. I sadly won't be able to come back next year, but I'm really glad we were able to get to where we were. I was happy to see Carly get to state. She was a great representation for our team.
I'm Lucas Kramer. I'm a sophomore, and I placed runner-up individually at state.
I'm the head coach, Roger Taylor, and I am a senior because my son's a junior. We had a fantastic season for the boys. We were 16-1, and we calculated that we bowled nearly 60 hours of practice, traveled several hundred miles for each meet throughout the season, had 15 meets, and it all came down to just 8 pins. So we were ahead of third place by 2 pins, and we missed first place at state by 8 pins, and we've already done it. I know that each of the guys on the team went through their bowling for the day, and they all tried to find that 8 pins with themselves. But it was a team effort. We had a fantastic season. Our fans at the Wayward Social Bowling Center have been wonderful, and Stacy Lima has been an assistant for us for the last 5 years, and she's absolutely wonderful to have on the team as well.
I'm Stacy Lima. I help both the boys and girls programs, and it's just a fun group to be around. I don't know. I've been a part of many teams, and they're ones that they're passionate about what they do, and that's kind of what you want in every realm of your life, is to be around people that care and have a passion for what they're doing. So it was a fun season, and luckily we returned quite a bit, and we can go after it again in the future.
Thank you very much. Any
Nice.
comments from board members?
On behalf of the district, we congratulate you and your display of excellence at the state meet. We know that you have the burden of, I think, being ranked #1 most, if not all, the year on your backs, which is a really, really difficult thing. And like the golf team, the amount of hours that you have to put in to compete at the level that both the boys and the girls have for many years really have become a dynasty, and it's kind of an expectation. You set a great example for other programs and where we hope them to be. So congratulations on that. We're looking forward to next year.
We do have unfinished business.
Yeah.
We are proud and beaming for you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Looking at the consent agenda, does anyone have any additions or corrections to the minutes of February 19th? Any items of note on personnel?
There are none. Although, I will say, while we're very pleased to put forward a candidate for our business operations director to replace, which is very difficult to do, Mr. Bartz, who will be leaving us at the end of the month. So Paulette Newbold, who's been for the past 10 years the director of business operations at Boone, has agreed to come to Marshalltown effective April 2nd. And Mr. Spaghettis, I'm sure, will be at our next meeting, and Mrs. Newbold will be here to be introduced to the board, obviously, as well, and to act as a business manager.
Looking at interagency agreements and contracts, we have contracts with colleges and universities for student teaching, Meadow Lane Mall, a storage facility, our fall keynote speaker, and a level 1 special ed student, open enrolled out, or enrolled out, sorry. Any questions about any of those? Looking at open enrollment, we have some that will finish this year and others for the 18-19, some in, some out. approval of the donation that we just received. We have a request to conduct a study with a professor from the University of Iowa. And I believe Naomi is here to answer any questions if you have any for her.
Dr. Wesley is here too. Awesome.
I have noted that in the parent letters, there is a permission for participation as required. Any other questions?
We would intend to, for the donation, change the amount to reflect what actually was donated this evening for the record.
May I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Moved.
Second.
Heitman, Carter, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the same. The motion carries 5-0. Nothing on public comment?
Nope.
Okay. Mr. Taronis, please come forward with your students.
Good evening, Deanne Taronis, Dean of Students at the high school. I have some great, wonderful students from Marshalltown High School. Giovanni, Daisy, Juliana, and Araceli. We'd like to present to you just seems like I'm here at least every year, but it seems like these years are flying by. I was just here. We have another great trip, hopefully planned, to Kansas City this year. But these are students who are invited to come and just kind of share their experience a little bit about our club. Giovanni is a student who's involved in the MEP program. All of these students are involved in different ways. Daisy, you're taking a health concepts class currently, aren't you? Araceli is a student who's taking the biomedical courses in the past, I think mostly last year. And Juliana is involved in our MCC courses, all 4 of them, I believe.
Yep.
So if you have questions for them along the way, certainly please ask. But this year, we are planning to attend or take a trip to Kansas City. Kansas City has a unique health science district that they've just recently kind of formed in the downtown area. And looking at the map, the Truman Medical Centers are the areas that we've contacted. They're putting together a committee and have put together a committee to give us experiences in 4 different locations. And I think we'll talk about that along the way, but I think I'll let, who was the who? Juliana's going to just read a little bit.
The Marshalltown area
Would you
health
use the
careers.
microphone?
Is that good? Is it on?
That worked. Yep, we're good.
Yep.
The Marshalltown Area Health Careers Club has been an academic support for Marshalltown High School students whose careers interest in healthcare. Students grade 9 through 12 attend monthly learning activities, which include guest speakers, field experiences, hands-on learning activities, and networking with local and regional healthcare professionals.
Can you share a little bit about your experience, because you've been in the club for a couple, 2 years?
Yeah, I've been in Health Careers Club for 2 years, and I've learned a lot about it. Like I did a job shadow this past year, and I job shadowed sonography, and I think that's what I'm going to be going into in the near future.
What?
This year we have planned activities with Truman Medical Center staff in downtown Kansas City. Truman Medical Centers are a part of the UMKC Health Science District, a school of medicine, a school of nursing and health studies, a school of pharmacy, and a school of dentistry. Makes this health science district a center of learning and focuses on collaborative research and community outreach. This downtown district is unlike any other in the nation.
Daisy, this is your first year in Health Club. Can you give us a highlight?
Probably going to do the thing in Des Moines that we just did at the university. We went to, what was it called?
We went to Des Moines University.
And
we visited a
cadaver lab.
cadaver lab. The kids got to put on the gloves, go into the room.
Fragrant too, wasn't it?
They got to be hands-on, and it was great, wonderful, and I think a lot more than that.
It makes you really rethink what you want to do.
25 students have met requirements to attend this year's activity. Having attended 5 learning activities and 5 community service projects, all have participated in a variety and experience, including job shadows, hands-on activities, and listening to guest speakers, along with participating in a variety of volunteer activities at school, community, and their local churches.
Can you share your participation this year?
Well, one of my favorites was the cadaver lab that we did at DMU.
Awesome. All right.
We will leave school at 3 on Thursday, April 5th, and we will arrive at Kansas City between 6:30 and 7. We will enjoy the evening together at a hotel. Friday morning, we will arrive at Truman Medical Centers, and our day will be filled with learning activities in the following location: Sickle Cell Disease Center, School of Nursing, Trauma Center, and the Children's Hospital. All activities are being planned by Truman Medical Center staff.
Nice.
Share something with us.
My favorite activity to attend to was the cadaver lab.
What was your second favorite?
Second favorite.
What about some of your volunteer activities? What have you done to volunteer?
I did a fundraiser at Pizza Ranch to help raise money to go on the Kansas City trip.
Nice.
In your project leader class, in your biomedical class, did you learn about any of those topics? Were you studying the sickle cell?
I learned about the sickle cell disease. Yeah.
I think Arcel is looking forward to visiting that center and kind of using what she's already learned, just advancing that. So just to finish up, 2 vans from Jensen Ford that we are planning on renting. Actually Mrs. Johannes, Mr. Tronis, and maybe a board member would like to join us on this trip. Actually, I've got some others that are kind of waiting to see who's not going to go and who can go, but we have our chaperones pretty much lined up. Total cost is about $2,500, and all that money has been either raised by our club or it's come through donations from the McFarland Clinic Physicians Group. So we're excited. Kansas City is not too far away, but we do I'm excited about the committee that was formed out there at Truman Medical Centers, and they just make me excited about the experience that the kids are going to have.
Any questions from the board?
So if the cadaver lab was so exciting, have you read the book Stiff? Check it out.
So my daughter is a Des Moines University graduate. That was not her favorite part of the experience, having to work in a cadaver lab. But it's a necessary part of medicine.
So this group down at Kansas City sounds interesting. How did you get connected with this committee? Is this a new thing they're doing, or?
Actually, we try to identify local areas outside of the state.
Right, Memphis last year?
Kansas City was our next choice. But really, I don't know if you guys remember John Hughes. Used to be a person here in our community. Connected with him, and then connected with his recommendations. So the Truman Medical Center is really, it just seems like a perfect fit. It's in an area, it's a teaching hospital. All those schools that are involved, it's really all about learning. And so they were excited to have a group from Iowa come out and, again, excited about what they're going to be creating for us.
Cool.
Nice. Fun.
And I have a motion to approve the out-of-state field trip for the Marshalltown Area Health Club, Healthcare Careers Club. Very good, right? As presented.
So moved.
Second.
Fletcher Hernandez, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries.
Have fun.
Have a good trip.
All right. As we said at a previous meeting where the school calendar for 2019 was, or 2018-19 was approved, that we'd yet to decide on graduation date, but we had shared that given the fact that spring break was a part of the calendar that was adopted for next year, that it would not be able to fall on Memorial Weekend. So we reached out to the high school administration to take a look, and the date that they chose was Sunday, June 3rd, 2019. Looking at some dates that preceded that, almost everyone that they looked at had conflicts with student activities. So there's a lot going on that time of year, late May through early June, with especially athletic activities and the like. So staying on Sundays, consistent with the recent past, I think, in order to avoid activities. I believe 2016 was the last time, so just a few years ago, that graduation wasn't held on Memorial Weekend as well. Some of you may have received an email or two today relative to concerns from a couple parents of seniors about it not being on Memorial Weekend, and we explained, and as I had shared and as we've posted to the board docs today, state law does not allow for seniors to miss more than 5 scheduled days from the rest of the student population. And our board policy also, 601.2, states that as well to support the administrative rules of the Iowa Code. So that's why we can't just arbitrarily put it on Memorial Day, given where the calendar falls this year. We could have barely made it, had we not scheduled to have spring break for the coming year. And this is problematic every 4 or 5 years as the start date moves towards the end of the week. Anyway, we're recommending that the board approve graduation to be June 2nd, 2019. As I've said previously, in the event that legislation changes that, we're not anticipating that happening, even though there's been talk about it. If it were to, if legislation were to change, for example, if they were to change the August 23rd start date to the first Monday following the state fair or the 23rd of August, whichever comes first, we could actually do it on Memorial. But given the way it is right now, we could not.
Any questions for Dr. Schutte?
What, if that legislation were to happen, what's the latest we could actually feasibly change our schedule? Is that?
As far as the calendar?
Yeah, or do you feel like we're locked in for
I mean, the legislators will be done by June, and, we could change it at that time back to Memorial.
Okay.
Could I have a motion to approve Sunday, June 2nd, 2019 as the 2018-19 school year graduation ceremony as presented?
So moved. Second.
Heitman, Fletcher, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 5-0. And take out your books.
No, I forgot to. You're fine.
No, I just forgot. I forgot to read. I just forgot it.
Oh, no.
Oh, thank you.
You can share.
Feel free to join.
I've read it so many times. I
He's
can't
leaving. He's like,
Mr. Sprigattis, there's a third chair there. For you, specifically for you. Come join us.
So, Chapter 3 talks a lot about the impact that poverty has related to stress and on children's brains and how that resonates or, I guess, displays itself, so to speak, with kids in a variety of ways at school, and then also talks a little bit about things that can be done to correct or rectify that over time. I think, for me personally, some of the biggest takeaways are just the statements that, living in poverty is not a life sentence as it relates to brain development or ability to learn or ability to succeed, but certainly things have to take place to try to counteract that.
I think, Ben, last time you said that chapter 2 was the most depressing chapter you had read. Did this one help?
This was better.
This was better.
So, we could stick with the questions, or we could just have some open discussion related to what you saw or read. I think, one of the things that stood out to me, and those of us that work in this every day know this, but, there are tons of studies and research out there that shows a direct negative correlation between children in poverty and student achievement. And so when, we look at raw scores or standardized scores and we're comparing them, for example, across the state, we have to recognize whereas we all have the same end goal, it's going to take different types of things or different amounts of time in order to get to that end goal because of the interventions and the things that have to be done to help all students get to a point of readiness to learn.
Yeah, to that, the probably the sentence that stuck out most to me, paraphrasing, was the importance of teaching or developing capacity, not pushing content. Or helping develop the ability to learn and the ability to understand and the ability to work in certain environments, as opposed to teaching specific pieces of information. And that's maybe the gap that some of our low SES students come in with, is the behind in that capacity.
I think that when Jensen talked about all of the things that the school can do, he was pretty specific between the pages of 55 and 58. And many of those things we are doing, but not in a consistent, pronounced way. So I think it will be important for us as a district to look at those things and make them consistent throughout all of our buildings and not just happening in a building or two. One of the things that we always, with budget coming up, that we always look to cut are the arts. And one of the things that he says is that the arts are most important to children coming from low ES. Music, PE, art, it's the subject of art. So I think that as we look at making cuts to a budget, if that's necessary, that we look at the things that are important to our students as well.
I would say, too, the thing that I appreciated in this chapter was the 3 early childhood studies that they referenced, and how early intervention, is definitely the right way. The Perry study, the early Head Start study, I think it's Absidarian is how the third one was pronounced. They all speak to the effects not having a long-term, there's not a drop-off long-term, that there's sustainability when you have early intervention and you have a way of closing the gap sooner. And it also made me wonder, the part in there where they talked about the Flynn effect and how as generations go on, IQ goes up within families, and it kind of made me think about some of our community members and how we're a community of immigrants, and how just the sheer knowing the school system and knowing what you should have your kid ready to do once they come to school, and the things that we ask. If you didn't go to school in Marshalltown or go to a public school in Iowa, or I would even say anywhere in the Midwest, you'd be very unfamiliar with what those expectations were. Your child would go in possibly not having the benefit of a parent who was prepping their child for that experience. So kind of made me wonder how Marshalltown would fit into that concept, and if maybe over time we'll reap the benefits of that too, as families get rooted and planted here and raise their families here.
Well, of course, they talked about dance and yoga, and of course, we saw yoga as kind of a starter with the preschoolers that presented most recently. So along with the arts are opportunities, I think, for physical activity and whether it be physical education, recess, and those sorts of things. I think about, budget cuts over the past, a lot of times field experiences or field trips get cut out of the budget, and as we read, those are the exact types of things that these kids haven't been exposed to due to the lack of resources or ability. And so, how we blend those things in, whether we bring people in or allow our kids to go out to have those meaningful experiences, I think is really important. And, the significant outlay that we've made for technology and getting technology access into kids' hands, at least while they're in school, if not school and home, can also offset some of that by opening up the rest of the world to our kids too.
You can also piggyback on what B said about staff, just like number 4, the enrichment mindset of just making sure that our staff knows that, our students, even though they're, low income or whatever, they still have the possibilities to grow and have that mindset. I hear it so much, it's like their background, they blame it on how they grew up, but they have that opportunity as well to be enriched as well. And I think if we have the staff that is thinking positively about these kids, I mean, it helps them teach better as well. So some type of, I don't know, training or something that we can provide to make them believe that this can possibly happen to these kids, you know, that they can be somebody someday and
That's one
push
of
'em.
the big takeaways that a lot of our staff are taking part in professional learning,
Mhm.
community training, and one of the main messages is all means all.
Yeah.
And they ask you to do some self-reflection as a person, as a building, that do we really think all kids can succeed, or do we kind of think it's like 80% of the kids, or, you know, just trying to quantify it somehow, and it's surprising sometimes how hard it is to get all people to really
Right.
think that all kids can achieve anything they set their minds to, if we give them the right supports or give them extra time, extra resources to get it done.
Yeah. And I think it's just getting to that mindset that staff needs to get. I'm one of those. You know, when I started working at the school, you know, and I see some of those kids, I actually bumped into one, and he loves basketball, and I'm just like, I thought so wrong about you when you were younger, you know, because of the way he grew up and things that he was seeing at the home. I thought for sure, you know, but because I've learned so much, and I have, you know, research that I've read, you know, now I'm like, oh, yeah, there is possibilities. You know, I just feel like we need to push that into staff sometimes. All staff, not just teachers, too.
And the book reinforced what we've talked about, and one of our goals is, you know, how do we best ensure that we hire only the best absolute teachers and/or employees that we can, and then beyond that, what do we do to continue to develop them, to help them improve in terms of their teaching strategies, intervention strategies, and their ability to differentiate effectively as well as personalize the learning experience.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the action steps that the author stated in embracing the mindset of change, was to invest in staff, professional development, time for collaboration, providing and encouraging the dialogue that Karina was talking about, that all kids can learn and be productive.
It's encouraging. When I just heard you talk about summer school, it reminded me, I've gotten a couple emails from teachers at Lenahan and Miller wanting to know, like, so do our kids get summer school then next summer, since the little kids are getting it? And I think the staff see that kids have a need. It doesn't stop once they're, you know, in third or fourth grade. They still have a number of kids who need help in the summer recouping stuff they'd missed because they missed too much school, or they were just, you know, struggling to read at grade level. So that's kind of been, you know, it's hard to say not yet, but at the same time, I'm hopeful that, you know, we'll see really great results and want to expand that to our older kids next year.
And we're fortunate that we'll have a very vivid life example of this with Manny Scott coming on April 11th, Wednesday, April 11th. And Manny's going to spend some time with our middle school students in the morning with a presentation. And then we'll be speaking with our entire employee group at the auditorium in the afternoon. We're going to have a 2-hour early out instead of a 1 hour on that day to accommodate it. And then we're going to have a community presentation at 5:30 to 7 probably that evening. So we'll be getting a lot of word out to our parents and the community relative to that. But Manny was one of the students, the real students in the Freedom Writers that movie was. That was illustrated in that movie. So he's got an extraordinarily powerful message of how even in the darkest of dark experiences, with the help of others, namely teachers and others, that you can rise above that.
When is that?
April 11th, which is a Wednesday.
I know several years, it had to be several years, when they brought a guest speaker too of, and I read all of his books, The Child Called It, the actual I don't know if anybody knows of that book, but I mean, he came to our auditorium and spoke to a lot of the high school kids, and it was a community-wide one too. And he went through a lot, if anybody's read his books, but he went through a lot through his childhood and became very successful, and he told his story, so this must be really good.
Were there any strategies or anything that piqued interest? You know, B mentioned the importance of being systemic with whatever it is that we do. And, you know, we have children that have these needs across the district. It isn't just in one building or two buildings. So we continue to have lots of conversations of how we can take the best of what we're doing, whether it's been done as a pilot or a special project, if it's something that's providing good to great results for kids, we want to figure out a way to take it across the district and provide equity in that sense, with summer school being a very good example of that. We continue to have discussions about social and emotional learning, which needs to be a bigger and bigger part of the equation, and how to teach explicitly some of the things that maybe we take for granted that are happening at home, in terms of how you respond to different things, how you react to different things, how do you work through conflicts or problems, you know, in a productive way, those types of things, and reinforcing when people are doing the right thing, and if they do the wrong thing, which kids have a tendency to do, then how do you turn that into a teachable moment?
And I think it's important that we begin thinking about the mindset. You know, the author talks several times about making sure that we're in a good place as the adults in order to help the kids also see that it's more than just our words, it's our behaviors, it's our actions. Many of the kids we're working with are coming from experiences that we don't relate to because we haven't had those. And so it's hard for us to assume or presume that, you know, they should come with the same skill set that we have. And we got to kind of put that thinking aside and just work with them where they come from.
Other comments?
Look forward to chapter 4. Seems like chapter 2 was, here's your problem. Chapter 3 was convincing us it can be solved, so.
So now we'll get on to some ways that we can.
Hopefully the rest of it is, here's how we can fix it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wesley.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to talk a little bit tonight about the current status of a couple of our E-rate RFPs and kind of where we are in the E-rate process and how I'd like to proceed for the 2018-2019 school year E-rate purchases. So on February 26th, we received several proposals back for our wireless access point RFP, our firewall, and our internet services. Some of these proposals were a little bit unexpected. It was my intent to come to you with some bid tallies tonight and talk about what the recommendations might be. These proposals were financially appealing, but there was a couple of things that we kind of had to work out on the back end. So currently, I'm in the process with a couple of our vendors getting some clarifications, asking some questions about the proposals that they had. So moving forward, what I would like to do is exercise a part of Board Policy 7051. When utilizing E-rate applications for funding, the superintendent shall have authority to approve purchases on the board's behalf And while you might ask, well, why am I doing that? Historically, I've come and, given you guys the bid tally breakdown, letting you know kind of what our recommendations are. Well, the filing of the 471, which is the second part in the E-rate process, it's where you're actually, after you've evaluated your bids, you're saying, okay, we're going to choose to go with this vendor. That gets proposed to the feds, and then they take a look at it and evaluate on whether or not we're going to get those funds. That deadline is March 22nd. And we only have one board meeting before then, and that 3 days would not leave me, in my opinion, enough time to get all the paperwork needed to be filed. So what I would like to do is provide bid tallies when we have a recommendation, and either give that to you guys in a Bobcat News or Notes or some other method rather than a board meeting. And why can't I share what I have currently? Well, that would violate the open competitive process that's required by USAC. If one of the other vendors were to view this board meeting and see what another vendor was bidding, and we were still in talks with them to try and iron out some of the questions I have, that would not be good. We'd probably not get E-rate funds for that. So in an effort to maintain fully transparent, again, I would be submitting to you guys all the bid tallies, the vendors that submitted, the recommendation from the technology and other departments involved in these purchases. And for reference, I've included what I thought my estimations were for the costs of the project. And what I can say is they're going to be lower than those estimates. Any questions or concerns?
Well, and you had shared that this provision in the board policy was to address this very situation.
Yeah, when you're dealing with E-rate, it's oftentimes you're dealing with very short timetables, and things need to get approved in a short amount of time. And I believe that's why this stipulation was in the purchasing policy to begin with. So.
I think I'm fine with this. Part of what you said, though, is you were going to send out the package when you did have it.
Right.
And then I guess just see if anybody had objections. Is that good per open meeting clause? No? No.
So what I would intend to do would be based on the feedback of the technology department, Theron's input, Brian's input, would be to not necessarily, well, we would award the bidders saying that, yes, this is what we plan on proceeding with. We're in the middle part of the E-rate process right now, the filing of the 471. All of these agreements that we're making are pending E-rate funding. So if for some reason we don't get that, we're not on the hook to pay. The next filing of the 486 is actually when the school district goes through and says, yes, we're willing to accept these E-rate funds. This is the vendor we're choosing to go with. So does that kind of answer your question? Does it make sense? We still have an option to opt out if Theron, Brian, myself decide to award one of these vendors, and you take a look at it and you say, well, why'd you do this? This doesn't make any sense. The 486, before that gets filed, we'd still have the opportunity to pull back on that.
All right. No, I mean, it sounds like you already presented your estimates and your plans, and the board, I think in general, was okay with it, and I was okay with it personally. So if your biddings are coming back in that range or below, seems
And that would be
reasonable.
correct, yes.
Seems like a reasonable plan then.
And it might just be appropriate to share it at the next meeting as a summary.
Sure, yeah.
And that wouldn't necessarily have to go, just an informational, that way it's public and
Sure. yeah,
everybody
we
gets to
could
see
definitely
it,
do
and, yeah. That would work.
All right.
Next one's yours too.
Let's see if I can get this to work.
Phone system.
There we go.
Some impressive pointer skills.
Yeah, it was a little difficult there. So the next topic for discussion and action is our current phone system is approximately 13 years old here. It's an old Mitel system that's no longer supported through Mitel. We're having difficulty even getting replacement parts. We're oftentimes buying used or refurbished handsets and phones just because the manufacturer does not make them anymore. It's almost to a point of where the phones are collectible. If you find one new in box, you're going to be paying a premium for it. So parts are difficult to obtain. It also uses a technology called Centrix lines. It's a really old technology used in phone switching. We've been notified on several occasions by CenturyLink, our current phone provider, that it's on their plans to stop supporting these Centrix lines. They won't give me a firm date on when they're going to get rid of them, but it sounds like we might be what's supporting the Centrix technology. So what I'm going to ask for tonight is the approval to publish an RFP for a new telephone system with some newer features. One of the features that a lot of phone systems have these days is something called unified communications. And that includes things like audio conferencing, voicemail to email, the ability to have a soft phone forward your calls to a cell phone, integrated instant messaging functionality with calendar, some integration with G Suite. Another area that I think could be really, really beneficial is some of the student safety aspects that can get kind of integrated with a phone system. Some of the newer ones have capabilities of advanced E911, which is the ability to track a 911 call to the exact physical location of where that 911 call has been placed. So, for example, if a teacher in a classroom dials 911 on their phone, there could be some automation going on in the back end where an administrator could receive an email saying that room 201 just dialed 911. It could even get it as advanced to immediately go over the speaker system. If we had a more advanced door lock system, it could integrate with that as well. Call recording is another feature that some of the newer systems have. If that was something we would be interested in, they have the ability to record the phone calls on the back end. So I guess what I'm requesting tonight is the approval to publish an RFP for a new IP-based telephone system with emergency notification and unified communication features. I would estimate the cost of being about $275,000 to replace the current system that we have based on the number of handsets and some quotes that I've received from different vendors. Any questions?
This is mostly I'm not going to use the right terms, but essentially just handsets and some kind of system to run it, not any infrastructure.
Correct. The technology department has been building on the back end the capability to support these new handsets. IP phones are powered over Ethernet, and a lot of our switches that we have in the district can support that. So all you have to do is plug the phone into the wall and it'll power up. So we built that in the back end, but yeah, it would include new things like server integration. We'd have to reevaluate our current Centrix lines for another form to get our actual service into the district, replacing all the handsets.
Okay.
So licensing, that's in there as well.
May I have a motion to approve publishing an RFP for a phone system upgrade as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Carter Heitman, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
I guess I'm up next. We sent out received 4 bids for the auditors. We put out both a 1-year and a 3-year option for the auditors. After receiving those, Jody, the business office manager, and myself went through a matrix and rated those, all 4 companies based on their bid and also various other things like the number of people in the firm, number of partners, and the like. Basically, we came down to selecting Nolte, Corman, and Johnson, our current auditors. And during the finance meeting we had, we thought it best that we just go with a 1-year contract with them due to changing of the Director of Business Operations, and that they will be rebid again next year for possibly a 3-year agreement. So our recommendation at this time is to select Nolte, Corman, and Johnson for a 1-year contract in the amount of $15,700.
Questions for Mr. Bartz? I have a motion to approve the selection of auditor for the 2017-18 school year as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Heitman, Carter, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries 5-0.
Next item is certified budget information. It is that time of year, again, for the certified enrollment to be approved. This is kind of an information session. The actual budget needs to be filed by the county auditor by April 17th. Can we move up there? Okay. What we have here is an analysis of the last 3 years, financial information from the certified budget. This year, taxable valuation with gas and electric is $1,044,212,286. That's such a large number. I don't read those too often. And that was up approximately $25 million, which is an increase of 2.47%. And you can read down there as we go along. Taxable valuation without gas and electric was also up 1.3%, 1.36%, and TIF went from $6,700,000 to $26,200,000. We're anticipating a 1% growth in the state funds this year, down slightly from the current year. Budget enrollment was 5,458, up slightly from the current year of 23 students. Due to the 1% increase, the regular program district cost per pupil is $6,772. That's up $67. Our at-risk modified supplemental amount that the board approved approximately 2 months ago, we're asking $1,382,000. That's an increase of $197,000. Projecting management levy to be $1,060,000. That's an increase of $60,000. Voted PEPL, this is the district rate. This was passed by the voters, and I believe that expires in 2025. That's at 67 cents per thousand evaluation, and that will generate $717,000. A regular PEPL, which is 33 cents, this is a board-approved PEPL, and that 33 cents will generate $353,262. This district also has public education recreation levy, also known as PEARL, of 13.5 cents, and that money is shared some with the city to help with their programming for summer activities and the such. That is 13.5 cents per thousand. Debt service, we're asking $200,000 to cover the GO bonds. The balance is paid out of the save dollars. Those bonds, every year's payment is approximately $2 million. So approximately $1.8 million is paid out of the save dollars, and this is a $200,000 levy to cover the balance. And that 200,000 costs approximately 18 cents per thousand. Our instructional support levy, which is 10%, generates just over $2 million, and that tax levy rate is $1.94 per thousand.
Do we know that when that needs to be revisited?
I believe there's 3 more years, and that was, at that time, the board approved that. You can approve it for 5 years or take to the voters for a 10-year approval.
I don't know what you mean by that. You said instructional support levy, that is 10%. 10% of what?
10%, that's the maximum, and there's the state used to put money towards that. I'd have to go back and actually determine what because the 10%, it's not 10% of the valuation, because that would only generate $1 million, so.
It's capped.
So you get to the bottom there, and basically all the tax rates, the general fund tax levy rate would generate $16,355,226, which is an increase of $352,823 over the prior year. And that rate would be $15.61 per thousand, which is down slightly from the current year. All the funds levy rate together would generate $18,826,686, up just a little over $500,000 from the current year. And that rate would be $17.95 per thousand. Basically, each 100,000 is about 9.5 cents per thousand, generates $100,000 in tax revenue. If you want to skip to the next. What this page is a history of the tax rate and the cash levy rate, and also the SBRC dropout prevention, what's been asked in the past from the property tax owners. Basically, this rate that we're projecting for next year is pretty even with the last 2 years, down slightly from 4 years ago and also 5 years ago. Are there any questions? This needs to be published. We're looking at April 2nd as the board hearing, or the public hearing for the certified budget. And I have to publish in the paper the maximum levy that the board will ask, 10 days, but not more than 20 before that board meeting.
So Brian, in 15-16, in 14-15, when the SBRC dropout prevention and at risk was 1.7 million, would that be pretty close to being maxed out?
I believe that was maxed out.
And again, at that time, well, when Brian came, it was recognized that it was being spent out. So there was significant carryover, so that's what led to the drop in askings and tax rate of about 36 cents per thousand at that time.
So when we approved the at-risk funding a couple months ago, we knew that the at-risk levy was going to go up about 20 cents, which is reflected here. I guess I thought at that time our expectation was our overall levy was going to go up about 20 cents, and it hasn't, so good news. But I don't know where that 20 cents went. What did we know this was going to stay flat? Did we change something so it was able to stay flat? Is it this outcome of budgeting off of 0% and getting 1%, or evaluations going up, combination of things?
No, I think we had 1% in our projections. It's just the difference between the projection model and the actual certified budget worksheet that comes out from the Department of Management. Our special ed numbers were down quite a bit. We're looking at probably 250,000 less in special ed dollars coming in. And then the state also changed in their instructional support how that, some of those numbers, how they're generated. So it was, because I had, when I finished the worksheet for the certified budget, it was lower than what we had anticipated. So I also forwarded that worksheet to the Department of Management, and they reviewed it. And I also forwarded it to the Forecast 5 people so they could review it. And they updated the forecast model that we had to reflect the state changes that had been made. Even with these numbers, as we discovered last year, it's not 100%. Last year, the board had approved one rate, and the state had made changes. It actually raised the rate, but it was the board's decision to lower that rate back down to what was approved. Because the only time you can go over that rate is if there's changes made in the legislature that cause that rate to go up. So there's various factors in there. There's schools that have that are property poor. There's an adjustment in there, and this year there'll also be an adjustment for the per student allocation as well as the transportation. So those things that aren't 100% yet can possibly change.
Remind me where the SBRC special ed funding ends up. Is that on this sheet somewhere, or is that?
That's in the cash reserve levy.
Okay. So when we do our annual SBRC, is what's in this sheet this year's, or the one that was most recently approved?
The one that was most recently approved is in next year's cash reserve levy.
Okay. And I'm
It's in that
having
3
trouble
point-
with my terms, but this is next year's, right?
That is correct.
This sheet shows that most recent one we were,
Right.
okay.
This is 18-19 certified budget, and it's 3.2 million asking in the cash reserve, and that includes all those amounts that were requested and granted from the SBRC.
Any other questions for Mr. Bartz?
I'm glad we were able to both do what we want to do in the at-risk budget and have the tax rate stay flat. It's good news.
Moving on to board policies.
As far as the first readings of the policies that were reviewed at the last meeting, there's been no changes from that particular meeting. Again, 503.3, which is becoming 504.3, other than numbering changes, there was a paragraph added to the policy on school publications that we are adopting from ISB. And 503, which is now going to be 504.2 on student organizations. There were changes as suggested by our attorneys, Chris Worsberger and John Beldy.
Any questions? May I have a motion to approve the amendments to 504.2 and 504.3?
So moved.
Second.
Carter Hernandez, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. And waive the second reading?
Aye.
Still aye? Okay. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Initial review of policies, these were Ross's, but in his absence, I'll cover them. 503.11, which will now become 504.7 on school-sponsored camps. We're good with the existing language.
Mark has reviewed.
503.12, which will now become 504.8. Private activity camps, we're good with that language as well. There's just some numbering changes.
Mark has reviewed.
503.12R will become 504.8R. And we've got slight change based on Brian's review of the existing policy there.
Where do we need to come back?
And that's just to reflect current practice, isn't it, Brian?
Yes.
504.1, which will now become 507.1, student health and immunization certificates. We had our lead nurse, Stacy Toole Crawford, look at this, and she's making some proposed changes there.
To come back.
504.2, which will become 507.3, exclusion for communicable diseases. We're recommending that be marked reviewed. And the same for 504.3, which will now become 507.4, injury or illness at school. We're recommending be marked as reviewed as well.
Okay, so we have two coming back, 504.8R and 507.1.
Correct.
Okay. Well, hey, what a deal
Do we need to vote?
to have them come back.
I mean, two of them are reviewed, right?
No, we just mark them as reviewed. We
Okay,
don't have to do
gotcha.
any of those. Okay, moving right ahead. Looking at reminders, the next board meeting is March 19th, and we will have Woodbury presenting at that meeting. Sean, you're up. And we hope those go as fast as the ones did tonight.
Maybe I'll let Ross do mine too.
Or not do yours, if the case may be. Moving ahead to committee reports. Sean, would you report on the finance committee?
Well, the only thing that the finance committee talked about that we didn't discuss here tonight, we talked about the phone system upgrade. Josh came in and talked to us. We reviewed the auditor proposals, the certified budget timeline and budget rate. The only thing we talked about that we didn't talk about tonight was the elementary free lunch, the lunch program. And Lynn Large came in and talked to us. She shared data with us about our free and reduced percentages as reported by parents. And then the way that the CEP or the free thing works is that's actually based on data that's directly reported by Department of Human Services. And so she's analyzing that and looking at those numbers at the elementary level and how that's going to shake out. And she was waiting for some final numbers that she'd have by April to give us all a report at that point on where things are going food-wise.
Yeah. I think there was a change. I'm not sure if she knows this for sure, but there's a change in the way the state's reporting free and reduced. It's gone up or down from 130% to 160. Isn't that what she talked about too?
To qualify.
To qualify.
Qualify.
So, which means less
Less.
families would qualify.
So And some of the schools were kind of on the edge as to whether we can do CEP.
CEP being the community.
That would be the 100%
program.
free.
The whole.
But we don't have all the, yeah, we don't have all the, everything in.
She's kind of hoping for some good news here during this month on that front.
We'll hope with her. Thank you. Internal?
We had our most recent internal communications meeting on February 23rd. Some of the topics that were covered, we had a little bit of discussion about the tentative plans for the April 11th Andy Scott presentation. We talked about some building safety issues as it related to some work that we were engaged in terms of replacing doors and things like that. We had some questions relative to our own employees attending their own children's parent-teacher conferences during parent-teacher conferences. We had some discussion about a desire to maybe develop policy or regulation as it relates to the master's thesis approvals when it involves research of some kind or another with our students. So we had shared that we would develop something to help provide guidance as to what would be expected in those proposals. Behavior concerns was talked about, which has been pretty much a standing item here and everywhere in the state and country. So we were able to talk about some of the things that we're currently working on throughout the district, and then some hopes in terms of what we were looking at going forward as well. We talked a little bit about our book study with both the board and the administrative team, which has generated interest amongst staff as well. So we'll be thinking through, how moving forward best to address that at the building level. We talked about consistency across buildings with the implementation of PBIS and how we report minors and majors. Another standing item, the concerns over lack of sub-availability was discussed, and we also had a little bit of discussion and refresher on how weather-related decisions are made. That pretty much covers it.
And we had some of us attend an interest-based bargaining. Tony, could you do that for us?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'd say we had 16 to 20 roughly, some administrators, some board members, and some teachers that are on the NEA executive, or on NEA negotiations team. So this was our second training we held to catch some of the people that did not attend our first one. And I think our next steps are to have each, as she called it, to go back and talk about how we're going to move forward with what we want.
Susan had a little trouble with names that night, so.
Just your name.
She got the right number of letters.
Business.
Yeah.
Business B.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
Okay, moving right along. What have we done this evening to improve the education of the students in the district?
A field trip sounds pretty good. I like what they're doing there. Got some
Want to go?
I wish I could. It seems like that's, I don't know, I've only heard good things about that program, so.
Yep.
Be good.
Well, that's great how they've, have donors, partners from the community in terms of McFarland Physicians Clinic, and they've taken steps to raise funds to help support those experiences for students as well.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we could remember to get them on the agenda for a future meeting to let us know how it went. We always, as Brian stated, we always ask people to come back and they never do. So.
We did have them come back, I think, last year, didn't we, after the St. Jude's visit?
I think they talked about that. No?
I'm not so sure we heard after the, yeah. Maybe.
Maybe. Anything else?
I think the book study's been really good. I've heard, I had a conversation with Jackie Wyant today, and it's definitely generated some thought amongst the buildings and in the district, so I think that's a good thing.
It was great seeing another exemplar of excellence in terms of our student performance with the bowling team.
It's nice to have the donations. And more than we had anticipated. My quote for this evening is from Mr. Anonymous. I think we've had some from him before. Kind of interesting when you think about it. Takes a minute. Do not confine your children to your own learning, for they were born in another time. May I have a motion to move into closed session to evaluate the superintendent as provided by section 21.51I of the Code of Iowa?
So moved.
Second.
Fletcher Hernandez, all in favor, roll call vote?
Heitman.
Yes.
Hernandez.
Yes.
Biblock.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Fletcher.
Yes.
Okay. We are in closed session. Bye-bye.